In today's Farm Report, the U.S. House of Representatives is moving this week on a GMO labeling bill. I had a chance to speak with Dave Ladd from RDL and Associates about what this bill is aiming to do and where the votes are going to lie.
Well, this has been a bill that's kind of been in queue for a number of months, and those that have an interest in it have been watching closely. And as they've worked to hammer out a deal and address the concerns of the organic food sector and other sectors, they've been able to move it through House Agriculture Committee last week, and now we're going to see it on the House floor this Thursday. And essentially, its effort to respond to these state-by-state GMO labeling requirements that are kind of creating a patchwork effect rather than a national voluntary standard as to now what's going to be how the approval process is going to work, as well as a criteria for a label that says non-GMO, which of course there's a market for that as well, but it would create a federal standard rather than a state-by-state standard on an individual basis. And so what we'll see is the House floor will probably see 50 to 60 Democratic votes on the House side, but it's also likely that this bill in its current incarnation in the House will lose some Republican votes.
Ladd also talked about how the issue over genetic engineering is not just either a Republican or a Democratic issue, but it does cross party lines.
And I think what's been demonstrated is the concern regarding the genetic engineering crosses party lines, especially strong opposition in the Northeast. And plus, there is this issue of states' rights. Should the federal government, in the views of some, be preempting the states and their ability to have their own GMO labeling laws rather than a federal standard.
Dave Ladd, president of RDL and Associates, he's been talking about the recent GMO labeling bill that will be voted on the House floor tomorrow.
Corn silking advanced rapidly this past week to reach 55% nationally. That's 1 point behind the 5-year average and 2 points ahead of last year. USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey attributes the progress to positive weather conditions.
It's interesting to note that more than a quarter of the U.S. corn crop moved into the silking stage of development during the week ending July 19th, indicating how critical it is at this point in the season for temperatures, which across the vast majority of the Corn Belt stayed below 95 degrees during the week.
Iowa, Minnesota, and South Dakota experienced the best growth percentage. As for corn condition,
on paper is steady at 69% good to excellent, 9% very poor to poor, but we did gain 2 percentage points in the excellent category from 15 to 17%.
States like Indiana are suffering from ponding, and others in the southeast, like North Carolina, are faced with high heat, both causing the corn condition numbers to drop. For USDA Radio, Susan Carter, Washington, D.C.
Being successful in the farming industry is not about luck, but about doing things right. Jim Sulphur with the University of Minnesota Extension Service Office shares some characteristics of successful farming.
I've had the opportunity in my extension career to get on a lot of farms in Minnesota and even throughout the upper Midwest, both on research projects and getting called out to do farm visits and planning with dairy producers. Also the chance to travel to particularly Canada a couple of trips and get on a number of farms in those areas. And as I travel across that area, you know that there's really wide variations in farms, from grazing to great big farms to small farms that are all successful. But there seems to be some real common characteristics of what makes those farms successful, even though they look very differently. So I'm going to cover some of that today. And I would argue a lot of these aren't really unique to farms. A lot of them, I would argue, whether you own a hardware store or a grocery store or a gas station, really most of these characteristics are across all kinds of businesses. But all of these dairy producers I get on, the ones that are successful, they really have a good vision, both short-range and long-range vision of where they want their business to be. So they think about the next year and are thinking about what can I do to move my business ahead. But on top of that, they really are thinking 3, 4, 5 years. What's the next building I'm going to build? Where should my feed storage be located at? Do I maybe need more land to procure my feed? Maybe do I need less land? Is rent too high that I'd be better off taking that money, invested in another freestall barn or tie stall barn, and milk a few more cows? These top dairies also just innately keep really good records, both production records and financial records, and then they really use those records to make business decisions. I go on some farms and they have really good records, but they don't necessarily, maybe they don't understand them, but they really don't study them and use them to move their business ahead. Along with good business skills, these guys have just really good production skills. And so they have the ability to either procure or put up really good quality forage. On these farms I work with good production, it seems like that forage quality, no matter what our weather, is just consistently good from year to year. Part of that is these dairies are very organized and they really get work done all the time on time. So you go out there and all the choppers are ready to go, the equipment is all maintained, and a lot of that is really just maintenance. And so if you want to aspire, if you're maybe not quite at the level your neighbor wants to be, or you're a young aspiring dairy producer or business owner, these are some of the characteristics that I see that are pretty common across all sizes and types of dairy farms. So let's move your farm ahead, and hopefully you have some of these skills or have the ability to acquire some of these skills and move your business into the future. This has been Jim Salfer with the University of Minnesota Extension in St. Cloud.
After 3 straight months of declines in retail food prices, March, April, and May, new consumer price index figures for June showing a turnaround. Food prices at the grocery store rising in June, not by much though, 0.2%. An Agriculture Department economist Anne-Marie Coons says 3/4 of that price hike came from one product, eggs.
Egg prices increased 17.8% from May to June, and they're now 21.8% higher than they were this time last year.
A huge monthly price rise caused by the recent bird flu outbreaks resulting in the deaths of millions of egg-laying hens. We also saw some small price hikes for meats, but most foods going down last month. Fresh fruits and vegetables dropping 1.7%.
And they're now 3% lower than they were this time last year.
Dairy products continued their 6th-month decline in June. We're paying about 2% less for them than we did this time last year. And Anne-Marie says, remarkably, food prices overall since the year began have fallen almost 0.5%. She still thinks by year's end they will have increased, and she'll have a new updated forecast this coming Friday. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.